Hi, I'm Annalisa from Eye Candy Quilts, and right now we are going through and talking with a whole bunch of our fun friends about how important it is to be creative and working with your hands. It's just a fun thing that we put together because, every now and then we need some reminders. So today we were talking with Ellie, otherwise known as Mojave Farms Quilt Company. And she is also not only a wonderful quilter and purveyor of fine fabrics that are in my stash, but she is also a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be really fun to get her take as both a quilter and creative, and someone that knows your brain a little bit better, to talk about creativity and mental health and all that other good stuff. Thank you for joining us with our fun little, technology is always difficult for me. I don't know
Always
why. You think I would
can't
be
be
know how to
smooth.
do it by now, but
No, can't be smooth.
yeah, never. So when we were getting started, I know that you in particular, you're like, "Oh, there are some studies that I can look at and look at some particular things." Because when we were talking about, this is what I'm thinking of, and it was really for me the starting point was I read an article in the New Yorker by Eilert Waldman that was really sort of impactful for talking about how working with her hands has been very helpful for her mental health. And she
Absolutely.
chose quilting as her creative pursuit, which, I'm all for. Like, let's get more people in the club, more
I
quilters.
love it. Same.
Yeah,
Same. Yeah, we need more quilters.
we do. It's like the fabric, the we need more quilters. That way they'll make more fabric. It's just,
Yeah.
feeding the habit. It's fantastic. But in the article, she talks about working with her hands to help her mental health. So what
Yeah.
were, as a therapist, you are the expert way more than Dr. Google. So
Yes.
what do you know? What did you look at when you were looking at different sort of studies?
Yeah. So one of the things I was really curious about after we talked was is there a correlation between mental illness and artistry or
Hmm.
creativity?
Hmm.
Um, Many studies about that going back 50 plus years, and there really isn't a correlation between you have to be this tortured dark artist, painting in a loft, these very painful kind of, art pieces of artwork. There isn't a correlation between that and mental illness. There really
Thank
isn't.
goodness. That's
Yeah.
good because
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like a fair trade-off at all.
No, I think that's how a lot of it is portrayed in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there
Yeah.
are anecdotal kind of things like we talked about Van Gogh and cutting your ear off and being institutionalized, but you can create beautiful works of art, right?
Mhm.
But for every one of those, there's also a Maya Angelou,
Right.
and so it's very anecdotal as far as what is shown and what is stereotypical or what people think is stereotypical.
Right. And
Um,
one does not cause the other or
no,
vice versa.
no, not at all. Or only amazing geniuses are mentally ill, or those
Right.
alcoholic writers, they're gonna put everything into this novel kind of thing. Like that's very anecdotal, and
Yeah.
so there wasn't any kind of correlation between that. So I think the studies really focused on kind of like this psychotic schizo kind of mental illness,
Yeah.
and it's very different than someone who is situationally going through a bad relationship or a bad workplace or a bad living situation or postpartum depression. Those are kind of like situational things that might happen to someone that causes them to feel depressed or anxious or stressed about their situation. So
Yeah.
those are not at all the same thing. So we have to
Yeah.
be clear that this isn't like a like we're talking about persistent mental illness.
Mhm.
Yeah, not at all correlated with creativity or artistry or anything like that.
Right.
The studies did show, and I have done this for 25 years in my own practice, is um, there is a huge correlation between a reduction of stress and anxiety and depression
Yeah.
and crafting or
Right.
hobbying or making something with your hands. So there is a huge correlation. That's why you see so many psychiatrists and therapists that will prescribe their patients, like, I need you to find a hobby. I need you to find a
And
craft. I need you to
and when
find something that makes you happy.
right, like, and when you see, like, as someone who has been in therapy and stuff like that, when they say that, you're like, "Oh, yeah, whatever." It's like, "I need you to find something." I was like, "That sounds like work. Like, just write me a piece of paper
We
and
give
make
you
it like that."
homework. Yes.
Like, I you need to find a hobby. That doesn't sound like something that is good for my mental health. That just sounds like something that is, "Oh, you want me to do something that doesn't seem related at all." It's like
Right.
like I said, as someone who is not a studying the brain, that doesn't seem like those 2 things would go together.
Yeah. So what does it do for their brain? It
Mhm.
does a whole lot. So I mean, number one, there's like the physical aspect of your brain body connection is like the hand-eye coordination. It's going to like release all kind of good feelings.
Yay.
You're going to have a decrease in your blood pressure and heart rate. And it kind of gives you like this physical outlet for the mental energy that you have stored in your brain doing
Yeah,
all kinds of bad things.
yeah,
So instead of sitting in your room, stressing out, spiraling out of control, just ruminating on all of the what if this happens or what if that happens or I should have done this or I should have done that. You know, a lot of people that are very anxious are really focused on the past and stuff that
right.
happened, that they didn't do it right or it shouldn't have been that way, or they're very focused on the future. What if this happens? What if that happens? And so to refocus their brain and get it focused on right now, here in the present,
Mhm.
I'm going to work on this thing and I'm going to delay my worry, which is like another therapeutic technique. Like, you're not having surgery till next Thursday. We don't need to
Yeah,
worry about it and ruin our whole week. We're going to delay our worry until next Thursday, an hour before you drive to the hospital.
yeah,
And so, yeah, it kind of distracts their brain. And it kind of, I don't know how to describe this, but if anyone has heard of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you
yes.
know, the pyramid where the very base layer is I need to feel safe.
Mhm.
Like my body needs to be safe. I need to have food, shelter, water, clothing, that kind of like the very
Right.
base layer. And then you get into the higher things of like, do I belong or who am I? And you get to the self actualization. And so crafting or hobbying or doing something with your hands kind of jumps that first layer,
Right.
and it kind of tells your brain like, I'm safe, like I'm all good, I can focus on other things, and it kind of tricks your brain into just like relaxing so you can focus on other things.
And I didn't realize until for a long time when people said, and again, when a therapist or a counselor or someone says that you're ruminating, I
Mm,
didn't realize that was a specific thing other than going over something in my mind. I didn't realize that it meant something other than, um, like I said, I'm focusing on one thing. It is an actual separate,
yeah,
generally not positive process. So
not positive usually,
but
no.
yeah, so some of those things that again, just being outside of that those words, that nomenclature, jargon, however you wanna put it, I was like, some of those things really come down to communication when you take them and, you're listening to someone, and I wanna be creative, I want to do this for my mental health, and then they tell you the things and you're like, "Well, of course I'm thinking about something. What else do you mean? So how is being creative gonna help me stop thinking about it?" And
Right.
it's one of those, it doesn't you don't realize what parts of your brain you're using when you're being creative. It's like it takes you out of that loop.
Yeah, it's literally a whole different part of the brain for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And so a lot of people, they end up spiraling themselves. And so like they might spiral themselves into a whole panic attack.
yeah,
And so even, being able to stop it and do that self-talk where you're like, stop, we're not thinking about that right now. We're gonna go iron some fabric,
yeah,
or, so even if it's, someone's very depressed and having a hard time getting out of bed and getting ready and like, okay, you don't have to take a shower today. Can you go cut a couple pieces of fabric? Can
yeah.
you, like if you have an overall goal of like you and I are quilters, you want to complete a whole quilt. So like every day, let's give you just something really small.
Mhm.
and just get up out of bed and iron some fabric, and then you can go back to bed.
Yeah.
If that's all that you have, then that's okay. And then the next day, can you cut a couple pieces or sew a couple pieces? And then in the end, it just gives them like a little bit of momentum. We're just baby stepping towards your final goal.
Yeah.
And at the end, yeah, they have this thing that they have created. They have a sense of accomplishment. They are proud of it. They want to show it off.
Right.
They've they've met their goal and proved to themselves like I can do it. I can get out of bed and do something. And so it does help. I mean, not to say that you don't need medication in a lot of those kinds of situations,
Right.
but you need it to kind of take the edge off of what's going on so that they can do these little baby steps.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it's a lot, being creative, crafting, making, however you want to approach that, whether it is, knitting and quilting and sewing or
yeah.
watercolor, grabbing crayons, whatever you want to do, doing something being creative is I think accessible for everyone. It's like and we all know we live in America. We all know the barriers to healthcare and mental health and all of those fun things that are just
Yeah.
another conversation. But
Yeah.
I it's easy and or I don't want to say it's easy. It's much less paperwork to pull out something and scribble or
Yeah.
touch fabric or do something at the end of the day. It's everyone can and should have access to doing something that's creative.
Yeah. And I think not even be limited to the stereotypical crafting or creativity like we talked about, like
Mhm.
knitting or crocheting or
Right.
quilting or painting, cake decorating, like any of those kind of stereotypical kinds of things, but also something like journaling is creative, something like writing a short story is creative, woodworking is creative, rebuilding an engine is
Oh
creative.
yeah.
It's no different than a quilt. You're putting pieces together
Yep.
to have a running engine, you're putting pieces together to have a quilt for your bed, so there's all different ways to be creative. And I think even that my oldest daughter is a nanny. We've been talking about
Oh.
a
Mhm.
lot about childhood development, and she has like an 18-month-old that she takes care of every day. And we're talking a lot about how early you have to start in childhood development
Mhm.
to get their brains able to kind of do this kind of thinking, the creative thinking that, she's 6 months old and you're rocking her to sleep and you're reading a board book for
Mhm.
a little baby, A is for apple. And she doesn't even understand the language, but you're teaching her and modeling this habit
Right.
that maybe when she's older, she will be obsessed with books and reading books and letting her imagination and creativity take over.
Yeah.
um, Legos for children, building something with their hands and creating something, and playing Barbies and creating something like that. So even like starting really young. um, Juxtaposed to that, she has a family friend that has like I think like 2-ish-year-old boy,
Okay.
and that nanny doesn't nanny the way that my daughter does.
Right.
That nanny is very much like, I feed you, I put you to sleep, and then it turns on the TV.
Okay.
And that boy isn't really exercising a lot of his own creativity
Yeah.
and thinking and building and doing things with his hands. And so she's like, the difference I saw in him when I saw him versus the difference in the little girl that I nanny, like they're night and day.
Mhm.
And so when they go out to eat, they have to have an iPad or the child can't sit still. They're going to have a big meltdown kind of thing. So it got me thinking, like, I wonder people that are like natural creatives, people are like, I'm not creative,
Right.
natural creatives. I really would love to see if there's any studies, and I didn't find any, but if there's any studies that kind of go back to like childhood and what did your parents do that were creative? Were they modeling that for you? Were they giving you a book or giving you Legos or crayons or something that helped you kind of develop that skill? And now, as an adult, when you need to self care and you're like, wow, I'm super stressed.
Right.
And this weekend, I think I'm going to work on a quilt or I'm going to work on a painting or something like that? Is that where you lean into for your own self-care and, stress relief? So I would love to see a study like that. I didn't find any, but I think that would be super
Well, that
interesting.
sounds like one that you can run. It was like, just
No,
yeah, spend some study,
I've
do some,
never
do
been a
some stuff.
researcher.
Yeah.
No, do not have the patience.
Well, and to go with that, so we're talking about, creativity as sort of the prescription, it's the medicine. The
Yeah.
flip side of that too, that we didn't talk about before this, but
Mm,
and going back to how they play, how the kids play, is
mm.
boredom. Is
Oh,
like
yeah.
letting your brain be bored and
Yeah.
not doom scrolling, picking up a phone and scrolling through stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Letting your brain be bored is good, which is not a
It
fun thing
is.
to say. It's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
especially as an adult. I was like, I
Mm.
remember, at least for me, for being a kid, I had a lot more time to be bored as a kid with, waiting on this person for this schedule and doing
Yeah.
this and then having to wait my turn, and as an adult, I don't have those barriers anymore. It's what I say goes all of the time, which
Yeah.
includes my brain. And so if I'm doing something and I'm bored, then my first thought is, oh, something's wrong. I should be doing something. So
Yes.
doing something, for letting your brain be bored,
Yeah.
might not be a bad thing. Might get you a little bit more of that creative juice going.
It's not at all. And I don't know. I'm right on the edge of like Gen X and millennials, so kind of like a zennial. And yeah, I was one of those kids that I was so marginalized from the normal group of kids because I didn't have cable TV. I didn't
Mhm.
have anything fancy like that. Like the TV was for news when dad came home from work.
Yeah.
And so, but I had plenty of dolls and I had plenty of Legos. And I come from a family of artists. And
Mhm.
so, my first job was at my aunt's art gallery, where she was a
Oh,
professional
fun.
artist. And so she was teaching me how to sketch and how to paint and all those kinds of things. My dad was a woodworker. So I was out in the garage building things with him. My mom is kind of like me, like a jack of all trades, like cake decorating and painting and she did all that toll painting in the 80s, like that
Okay.
country style of painting.
Oh, I
Uh,
know what you mean. Okay, yeah.
yeah, so those kinds of things. So and then now we're both quilters. Like she sewed all of our clothes. Like it goes back generations of
Mhm.
yeah, we did not do like I grew up in Atari, Nintendo, Game Boy, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I had none of those things.
Right.
Was go read a book. So we always gift in my family, we always gift the children books.
Hmm.
That's just how we gift them. We don't gift them Game Boys. I don't even know what there is now, but we don't gift them, video games and things like that. But it was like, go get lost in your imagination. We give them art supplies, we gift them sketchbooks, we gift
Right.
them all kinds of things like that. And so I think that was just something that I had to be bored,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to create. And I had so much of that modeling around me from the adults in my life that that's just like, man, I just like flow right into that. So, absolutely, crafting is my self care. And I have had times where I wasn't working a slow paced clinic kind of job. I was working very fast paced, crazy hours, child welfare, social work kind of stuff
Yeah.
where you go to work at 7:30 in the morning and you have no idea what time you're going to come home kind of jobs.
Right.
And so I absolutely needed to have some way to like have an outlet and let that stress out. And it was absolutely my crafting or quilting or something like that. Like saved me a million times. You just have to have a way to let it out.
You do. And it's going to look different at different points in your life too. So,
Yeah.
and just let it, don't keep a stranglehold on it. It was like, be bored, try new things, all that other good stuff.
Yeah. And try different things.
Mm.
So maybe you've always been a quilter,
Right.
like us. And so maybe you're going to try painting or you're going to take a class on, I don't know, knitting or,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like try out different things. I was not a quilter really. I did lots of other things.
Okay.
My whole house is decorated with like Pinterest inspiration. And I'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, I love that. I can figure that out myself.
Right.
And I would, just figure it out and learn how to make it. I really didn't get into quilting until my mom got into quilting many years ago. And I was like, oh, I'll do that too. Like we'll have something to talk about. And now it's turned into a whole business for me,
Yeah.
you know? And so I have left the clinician part behind and
Mhm.
like completely transitioned into this other thing. So yeah, I didn't do quilting. I did lots of other things, but then you try it and you like it and you
Yeah.
end up sticking with it. You never know.
So, where can everyone find you in all of the places if they want to, get some of the goodies? I see your pre-cut stack right there of all the fun
Oh,
stuff.
yes. Yeah, that's some of our fabric I have to put away. Um, yeah, so we do have a website, which is Mojave Farms quiltingco.com. You can just Google Mojave Farms Quilting. We are on social media, so we are all over like Instagram, TikTok, um, YouTube. Like we
Yep.
are kind of all over the place. The standard three,
All the
I guess.
stuff and always the same
Facebook.
handle.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, good. And I know you're also one of the people that organize the TikTok Quilt Fest
I
too.
love it. It's so
So,
fun.
that's yes. So quilters are on TikTok, just throwing that out there.
There's
TikTok is
lots
for
of
quilters.
them.
Yeah.
And so just like Eye Candy Quilts, like
Oh,
we
yeah.
really wanted, at least on TikTok, to like build a community. Like
Mhm.
Facebook, I felt was like pretty established, Instagram, pretty established with their quilting community, but there really wasn't anything on TikTok. And so I was like, I've been on here for a few years. We need to gather our people together.
It
And so, I mean, people love free stuff.
just a little
And they
bit.
also, so we have great sponsors every year.
Mhm.
And then they also like to show off, right? Like
Yeah.
you made this wonderful masterpiece. And so you want to show it off to people. And maybe you don't have people in your life to do that, but there's lots of us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, let's spend a week showing off and winning things. Like that's great.
Exactly. People around you may not understand how hard it is to make that mitered corner perfect, but we
Yes.
do. So please show us.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
every March
Yes.
we do it for a week.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us and doing this today. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it. And find Mojave Farms Quilt Company in all the places and follow Eye Candy Quilts too. So, thanks.